Today, I want to talk to you about something we all do often without realizing it. We look at others. We scroll, we swipe, we observe, and we compare. But here's the thing, comparing yourself to others is the fastest way to forget who you are. You weren't born to be a copy of someone else. You were born to create, to build, to live your truth. The world already has a version of them. What it needs is you. So in this video, let's explore why you should stop comparing yourself to anyone and start becoming exactly who you were meant to be. You know, one of the biggest traps we fall into without even realizing it is thinking that we're supposed to be where someone else is. We look around and see what others are doing. Someone just got promoted, someone just bought a house, someone just launched a company, someone else is already doing the thing we dream about. And we start to think, why not me? What am I doing wrong? But here's the truth, and I want you to really hear it. Everyone has a different path. It sounds simple, but it's powerful. Life isn't a race. It's not a straight road. It's more like a series of winding trails, and no two trails are the same. Someone might seem ahead of you, but they're not on your trail. You're not even heading to the same destination. You might take a little longer. Your detours might look strange to others, but they're not wasted. They're part of your path. They're part of what shapes your voice, your work, your perspective. The detours are often the very things that make you different. And being different, that's where the real value is. When I was starting out, I didn't follow anyone else's map. There wasn't one. And I didn't feel the need to copy someone else's journey, because that would have taken me somewhere I didn't belong. We live in a culture obsessed with speed and comparison. Faster is better, bigger is better, younger is better. But when you build something lasting, something meaningful, it doesn't come from rushing or from trying to beat the next person. It comes from paying attention to where you are meant to go. And that means sometimes you're going to feel like you're behind. That's normal. That doesn't mean you are. We only feel behind when we look sideways. You ever notice that? When you're deeply focused on something that excites you, something you care about, you stop thinking about what everyone else is doing. Time disappears. You're just there doing it. But the moment you stop and glance at someone else's lane, that's when doubt creeps in. That's when comparison hijacks your momentum. There's something incredibly liberating in accepting that your timing is yours. You weren't supposed to peak at 25 or figure everything out by 30 or have a perfect plan by next week. You are supposed to keep discovering, keep evolving. There's no expiration date on growth or creativity or success. Some of the most impactful people you know didn't start where you think they did. They had quiet years, they had failures, they had long stretches where nothing seemed to work, but those years weren't wasted. They were essential. They were building the foundation. So if you're in a phase right now where it feels like you're not doing enough, like everyone else has it all figured out, pause, breathe, remember, you're not on their path, and the reason you're not where they are is because you're not meant to be. You're exactly where you're supposed to be for what's coming next. And what's coming next will be shaped by everything you're going through now. That's not just feel. Good advice, that's reality. When you try to force your journey to look like someone else's, you miss the lessons that are uniquely yours. You overlook the strengths you're building right now. You rush through the quiet chapters that are often the most transformative. And here's the irony. The more you lean into your own journey, the more you become the person someone else might one day look at and think, I wish I was where they are. But you won't be there because you copied someone. You'll be there because you stayed true to your path, even when it was unclear, even when it was slow, even when it didn't look like anyone else's. That's how real progress happens. That's how greatness is built. Not in comparison, but in authenticity. So if you take nothing else from this moment, remember this, stay on your path. ChatGPT said, there's something we don't talk about enough, the cost of comparison, not in dollars, not in time, but in joy. In confidence, in energy, every time you compare yourself to someone else, you're making a silent agreement that who you are, what you have, and what you've done isn't enough, and that is a dangerous agreement to make. You see, when you compare, you give up control. You start letting someone else define your value. You begin measuring yourself, worth against a standard that wasn't built for you in the first place. And the thing is, comparison doesn't motivate, it drains. It chips away at your belief in yourself, slowly, quietly, until one day you stop showing up as you hesitate before you speak, you second, guess your ideas, you shrink your ambition. Not because you're not capable, but because you've been too busy looking at someone else's highlight reel and forgetting your own progress. And let's be honest, we're comparing ourselves to illusions most of the time. To snapshots, to filtered versions of success that don't show the full story. You see the launch of someone's product, but you don't see the 10 years of work that came before it. You see the moment they're standing on the stage, but not the nights they sat alone wondering if they were good enough to even try. That's the trap. When we compare, we're measuring against the surface, not the substance. But what if you stopped doing that? What if instead of constantly looking outward, you started looking inward? What if you measured progress not by how you stack up to someone else, but by how far you've come from where you started? That shift alone could change everything. It's easy to forget your own wins when you're busy counting someone else's, but let me remind you, confidence doesn't come from applause. It comes from keeping promises to yourself. From doing the hard thing when no one's watching. From pushing through, even when it doesn't look impressive from the outside. And joy comes when you stop needing to be better than others and start becoming better than you were yesterday. There's a purity in self-focus, in knowing what you want and being content in your lane. That doesn't mean you don't care about excellence. It doesn't mean you stop improving. It means you stop measuring your growth against a moving target that was never meant for you. Because here's the truth, you'll never win the comparison game, not because you're not good enough, but because the game itself is rigged. The rules keep changing. The goalpost keeps moving. And no matter what you achieve, someone else will always appear to be doing more, doing better, getting there faster. So you can either keep chasing shadows or you can own your light. You can let insecurity run the show, or you can decide right now that your path is valid, that your voice is enough, that your work matters even if it's not trending. And you know what happens when you do that. You start to show up differently, not with arrogance, but with clarity. You stop trying to impress and start trying to impact. You stop worrying about what they're doing and start focusing on what you're building. That's where your energy belongs, not in self. Doubt not in envy, but in creation, in momentum, in truth. I'm not saying it's easy. It's not. The pressure to compare is everywhere. We're wired for it. Conditioned to rank, to score, to measure. But you can choose something better. You can protect your mind. You can step back and say, no, I'm not doing this anymore. And that choice, that decision to trust your own journey, is the beginning of peace, the beginning of freedom, because when you stop comparing, you start living. Success is a strange word. Everyone uses it. Everyone chases it. But have you ever stopped and asked yourself, what does it actually mean to you, not to your parents, not to your friends, not to the world, but to you? Because if you don't define success for yourself, someone else will do it for you. And that's where people start to lose their way. We grow up surrounded by these unspoken rules. Get the degree, land the job, buy the house, climb the ladder. It's a checklist, and it's everywhere. The problem isn't that those things are bad. They're not. The problem is when we assume they're the only things that count, when we take on someone else's definition of success without asking if it fits who we are. There's no universal version of success. There's only yours. For one person, success might mean leading a big team and running a global company. For someone else, it could be raising a family, writing a book, traveling the world, or building something small but meaningful in their own community. None of those are more important than the others. What matters is authenticity, that what you're chasing is actually aligned with what fulfills you. But too often, we don't even realize we're chasing someone else's dream. We're just running fast, trying to catch up, to not fall behind, to be seen, to be validated. And then one day, we get what we were chasing and it feels empty. That's one of the hardest truths people face. They climb the mountain, reach the top, and realize it was the wrong one all along. So the question is, whose dream are you really following? It's okay to change your definition. It's okay to step off the track that everyone else is on. What's not okay is living your whole life trying to impress people who aren't even paying attention, or worse, people who don't even know who you really are. You don't need to justify your choices to anyone. You don't need permission to want something different. If success for you means freedom over fame, depth over scale, peace over noise, own that. Real success is internal. It's not about trophies. It's not about applause. It's about waking up and knowing you're living in alignment with your values, that you're building a life that reflects who you are, not just what looks good on paper. That's where the fulfillment comes from. And when you're clear on that, the rest of the world can shout all it wants. It doesn't shake you. This is why comparison is so dangerous, because you're looking at someone else's version of success and using it to judge your own progress. But what if you're not even running the same race? What if their finish line isn't where you're supposed to end up? That's the trap. We see someone else thriving in their space and think, I should want that. But you don't have to want what they want. You just have to know what you want and why. The moment you define success on your own terms is the moment everything shifts. You stop trying to compete. You stop feeling behind. You stop needing validation. And you start building with intention, with clarity, with purpose. And that's when your work begins to really matter, not because it's louder, but because it's honest. And here's something I've learned: the people who are truly successful by their own definition, they're not the ones screaming the loudest. They're not the ones trying to be everywhere all the time. They're focused. They're grounded, they're clear, and you can feel it when they walk in the room. They're not trying to prove anything. They're just being. That's powerful. So if you've been feeling lost or restless, or like you're constantly falling short, maybe it's not because you're failing. Maybe it's because you've been chasing the wrong definition of success, and that's okay. You can pause. You can reset. You can ask the harder question, what does success really mean to me? And when you find your answer, hold on to it. Let it guide you. Let it shape your choices, and most importantly, let it give you the permission to live a life that's yours. ChatGPT said, we're living in a time where it's easier than ever to feel like you're not enough. All you have to do is open your phone, scroll for 5 seconds, and you'll see someone who looks like they've figured it all out. Someone with the perfect job, the perfect body, the perfect vacation, the perfect life. And if you're not careful, you start believing that's real. You start believing that's normal. You start measuring your life against a version of someone else's that isn't even fully true. Social media is a tool. It's powerful, but like any tool, it depends on how you use it and how aware you are of what it's doing to you. Because here's the thing most people forget. What you're seeing is curated, it's filtered, it's edited, it's been thought through. What you're seeing is the highlight reel, not the hard days, not the doubts, not the behind, the scene's mess, just the best 5 seconds someone chose to share with the world. And yet we compare our real lives, our mornings, our struggles, our insecurities, to that polished slice of someone else's story. No wonder we feel like we're falling behind. No wonder we feel like we're not doing enough. But that's not truth, that's just presentation. When you mistake the presentation for reality, you start building expectations that no one could live up to. You start chasing images instead of building a life. You think success should be instant, that happiness should be constant, that every part of your life should look perfect all the time, but perfection is a myth. It doesn't exist. And trying to live up to it will only leave you exhausted and disconnected from who you actually are. We didn't evolve for this kind of constant comparison. Think about it. 100 years ago, you'd compare yourself to maybe 10 people in your town. Now it's thousands, millions of people right in your pocket all day long. And we're not just seeing their lives. We're seeing their best angles, their best moments, with music and filters and captions to make it all feel even more polished. That's not reality. That's storytelling. And that's okay as long as you remember what it is. You've got to protect your mind. You've got to remind yourself often that what you see is not the whole picture. You're not seeing the missed deadlines, the relationship issues, the fear behind the smile. You're seeing a frame someone chose, and behind that frame is a full human being just like you, with struggles, pain, confusion, and doubts. So when you feel that wave of comparison starting to build, When you catch yourself thinking, "Why isn't my life like that?" Pause. Breathe, ask yourself, "Do I really know their whole story, or am I reacting to the part they chose to show me?" Because that question can reset everything. That question can give you perspective. There's nothing wrong with celebrating other people's wins. That's a beautiful thing, but there's a difference between being inspired and feeling inadequate. Inspiration lifts you, comparison shrinks you, and if something's making you feel smaller, if it's draining your confidence, maybe it's time to step back and reconnect with your own path. You don't have to live your life in public to make it meaningful. You don't have to post every milestone to make it real. Some of the most important progress happens in silence, in the days when no one's watching. In the small, honest steps you take when the cameras are off and no one's hitting like. That's where the real work is. That's where you build something that lasts. So if you're ever tempted to believe that your life doesn't measure up to what you see online, remember this. Your worth isn't found in how your life looks. It's found in how your life feels to you, in your peace, in your growth, in your truth, and no filter can capture that. Don't let someone else's feed distract you from your own focus. When you stop comparing yourself to everyone else, something powerful starts to happen. You begin to see what makes you different. And that difference, that uniqueness, is your greatest strength. But here's the part most people miss. We spend so much time trying to fit in, trying to be accepted, trying to meet the expectations we think others have for us, that we bury the very thing that sets us apart. We smooth out the edges, we quiet the weird ideas, we mute the bold instincts, all in an effort to seem more like everyone else. But here's the truth. No one ever made a real impact by blending in. What changes things, what moves people, what builds companies, what creates art that matters, what inspires real progress, doesn't come from imitation. It comes from the courage to lean into what makes you different. That part of you that doesn't quite fit the mold, that's the part that can change everything. It takes confidence to be yourself in a world that's constantly trying to convince you to be someone else. It takes courage to back your ideas when they don't look like what's already popular, and it takes clarity to hold your ground when everyone else is chasing trends. But that's what leadership looks like. Not echoing what's already out there, but saying something new, doing something real, being willing to stand alone, even if only for a while, because you believe in the value of your own voice. Your uniqueness isn't a flaw. It's not something to hide or downplay. It's your leverage. It's the thing no one else can copy. Anyone can replicate a process. They can study your strategy. They can mimic your style, but they can't replicate your mind, your story, your experience, or your lens. That's yours, and the moment you embrace that, everything changes. But I get it. It's tempting to look at what's working for someone else and think, maybe I should do it like that. And sometimes, sure, you can learn from others. You should, but learning isn't the same as copying. Inspiration isn't duplication. Take what resonates, adapt it, evolve it. But never dilute yourself in the process. The world doesn't need another version of someone else. It needs the full version of you. You want to build something lasting. Build it on truth. Build it on authenticity. Don't chase what's trending. Create what's meaningful. Don't worry about whether it looks like what everyone else is doing. Worry about whether it reflects who you are, because the work that lasts, the work that leaves a legacy, doesn't come from playing it safe. It comes from taking a risk on your own voice. And look, people may not get it right away. Sometimes when you do something original, people resist it. They doubt it. They question it. But that doesn't mean you're wrong. It just means you're early, and the ones who go first. They're the ones who make space for others to follow. Being different can feel lonely, but it's also where the breakthroughs come from. So don't shrink yourself to fit into a space that was never meant for you. Don't water down your vision to make it easier for other people to understand. If what you're doing is honest, if it comes from a place of clarity and intention, trust that. Trust your gut. Trust your creativity. Trust your weird ideas, your strange way of seeing the world, your bold instincts. Because the moment you stop asking for permission to be yourself is the moment you become unstoppable. The people who change the world, the ones who actually make things better, they're never the ones who spent their time comparing. They're the ones who saw their difference as a tool, as a gift, as a responsibility. So don't apologize for being different. Use it. Most people spend their lives waiting, waiting to feel ready, waiting for the perfect moment. Waiting until they feel like they're good enough, smart enough, talented enough. But the truth is, no moment will ever feel perfect. No amount of preparation will ever fully silence the voice in your head that says, maybe I'm not ready yet. And if you're constantly comparing yourself to everyone else, that voice only gets louder. The problem with waiting is that it tricks you into thinking progress is something that happens to other people. You look at someone who's doing something you wish you could do, and you start telling yourself a story. They must have more confidence, more connections, more luck, more something. But usually, that's not true. The only real difference is that they started. They took the risk. They moved even while they were uncertain. They didn't wait for someone to validate them. They decided to validate themselves. The people who do great things in life, they don't begin with full clarity or certainty. They begin with curiosity, with intuition, with a drive to build something real. They begin even while they're still afraid, and you know what happens when you do that. The fear doesn't disappear, but it stops controlling you. Action is what quiets doubt. Progress is what silences the question, am I good enough? Because the more you move, the more you prove to yourself that you are. That's the secret. You don't build confidence by sitting still and waiting for it to arrive. You build it by showing up. You build it by doing the thing over and over, until one day you look back and realize you've become someone who no longer needs to ask for permission. But comparison, it paralyzes you. It convinces you that before you can start, you need to catch up, that you need to be as polished, as successful, as complete as someone who's already been at it for years. That's the lie. You don't need to catch up. You just need to begin, because every person you admire, every leader, every creator, every innovator, there was a moment when they were starting too, a moment when they were unknown, when they had more questions than answers. When they were awkward, unproven, unsure, but they started anyway. That's what matters, the willingness to begin, to act, even when your voice shakes, to build, even when the outcome is uncertain, to speak up, even when you feel small. If you wait until you feel ready, you'll be waiting your whole life. And the world doesn't need you to be perfect. It needs you to be present. It needs your perspective. It needs your action. There's something powerful that happens when you decide to trust yourself enough to take that first step. When you choose to stop watching from the sidelines and start building your own game. Suddenly, the world around you begins to shift. You stop needing to prove anything to anyone. You start creating from a place of strength, not fear. From clarity, not confusion. From alignment, not comparison. And maybe you'll fail. Maybe you'll stumble. That's okay. That's part of the process. But you'll learn, you'll adapt, you'll grow. And eventually you'll build something that no one else could build, because no one else sees the world quite like you do. Every step you take in your own direction pulls you further away from comparison and closer to your truth. You stop mimicking what already exists and start contributing what only you can offer. You begin to measure your success by your own progress, your own growth, your own sense of purpose, not by how it looks next to someone else's timeline. So don't wait. Don't wait to feel ready. Don't wait until you feel like you're enough. You're already enough. Start where you are, with what you have, and build from there. And if you stumble, stumble forward. Keep going, keep moving, because everything you're looking for, clarity, momentum, confidence, it's all waiting on the other side of action.